Why can't some birds fly? In the lush rainforest of Australia, birds roost in the low branches and amble across the forest floor, enjoying the shade and tropical fruits. But the jungle isn't there alone. A dingo is prowling in the shadow, and fruit won't satisfy his appetite. The birds flee to safety, all but the cassowary, who can clear the ground on her peering wing. Instead, she attacked, sending dingo round the cover, one spike of her razor-sharp toe claws. The cassowary is one of the approximately 60 living species of flightless birds. These earthbound avians live all over the world, from the Australian outback to the African savanna to Antarctic shores. They include some species of duck and all species of penguin, secret swamp dweller and species of creatures, giant emus, and tiny kiwis. Those common ancestors of all modern birds could fly. Many different bird species have independently lost their flight. Flight can have incredible benefits, especially for escaping predators, hunting, and traveling long distances. But it also has high costs. It consumes huge amounts of energy and limits body size and weight. A bird doesn't fly, conserves energy, so it may be able to survive in a scarcer or less nutrient-rich food source than one that flies. The target of New Zealand, for example, lives almost entirely on the soft base of alpine grasses. For birds that nest or feed on ground, this predisposition to flightlessness can be even stronger. When a bird species doesn't face specific pressure to fly, it can start flying in as quickly as a few generations. Then, over thousands, over millions of years, the bird's bodies change to match this new behavior. Their bones, once hollow to minimize weight, become dense. Their sturdy feathers turn to flat. Their wings shrink and in some cases disappear entirely. And the kiwi-like protrusion on their sterns where the flying muscle stacked shrinks or disappears, except the penguin, who reproduces their flight muscles and kills for swimming. Most often, flightness is evolved after other species fly to island where there are no predators. As long as these predator-free circumstances last, the birds thrive, but they are vulnerable to change in their environment. For instance, human settle spring dogs, cats, and stowaway lorgnets to islands. These animals often prey on flightless birds and can drive them to extinction. In New Zealand, stoles introduced by European settlers has threatened many native species of flightless birds. Some have gone extinct while others are endangered. In spite of these energy-saving advantages of flightlessness, many flightless bird species have only a short run before going the way of the double. But a few flightless birds have survived on mainland alongside predator plenty. Unlike most small flightless species that come and go quickly, these giants have been flightless for tens of millions of years. Their ancestors appeared around the same time as the first small mammals, and they were probably able to survive because they were evolving and growing at the same time as their mammalian predators. Most of these birds, like emu and ostrich, balloons in size, weighing hundreds of pounds more than the wing can lift. Their legs grow thick, Their feet sturdy, and newly developed sliding muscles turned them into the formidable runners. Though they no longer use this to fly, many of these birds reproduce their wings for other means. They can be spotted tucking their heads beneath them for warmth, flossing them and protective meth, sheltering eggs with them, or even using them to steal as they charge across the plains. They may be flightless, but they are still winning it. In the large rainforests of Australia, birds roost in the low branches and amble across the forest floor, enjoying the shade and tropical fruits. But the jungle is theirs alone. A dingo is prowling in the shadows, and fruits don't satisfy his appetites. The birds fled to safety, all but the cassowary, who can clear the ground on her pure wings. Instead, she attacked, sending the dingo running for cover, one swipe of a razor-sharp tall claws. The cassowary is one of the approximately 60 living species of flightless birds. These are spawns that live all over the world, from the Australian outback to the African savanna to Antarctic shores. They include some species of dog and all the species penguin, sea the swallow dwells species oxygen, giant emu, and tiny kiwis. Those as common ancestors of motoring birds could fly, many different bird species have indefinitely lost their flight. Flight can have incredible benefits, especially for species predators, hunting, and traveling long distances. But it also has high costs. It consumes huge amount of energy and high size and weight. But birds doesn't fly, conserved energy is may be able to survive on a scarcer or less nutrient-rich food source than one that flies. But Turkey or Hell New Zealand, for example, lives almost entirely on the scarce soft base of alpine classes. For birds that nest or feed on the ground, this privileged position of flightness can be even stronger. When a bird species doesn't face a specific pressure to fly, it can start flying in as quickly as a few generations. Then, over thousands or millions of years, the bird's body changes to match this new behavior. Their bones, once hollow to minimize weight, become dense. Their sturdy feathers turn to flaws. Their wings shrink, and in some cases disappear entirely. And the kiwi like the protrusion on their sternums where the flying muscle attacks, shrink or disappears, except in penguin, who repurpose their flight muscle and kills for swimming. Most often, flyiness involves after a bird species fly to an island where there are no predators. As long as the predator-free circumstances last, the birds thrive, but they are vulnerable to change in their environments. For instance, human settlers bring dogs, cats, and stolen wildebeest to islands. These animals often prey on flightless birds and can thrive by their extinction. In New Zealand, storms introduced by European settlers have dressed many male species of flightless birds. Some have gone extinct while others are endangered. So in spite of the energy saved and advantages of flightless, many flightless bird species have only a short run before going to way of the dodo. But a few flightless birds have survived on the midlands alongside predators plenty. Unlike most small flightless species that come and go quickly, these giants have been flightless for tens of millions of years. Their ancestors appeared around the same time as the first small mammals, and they were probably able to survive because they were evolving and growing at the same time as their mammalian predators. Most of these birds, like emu and ostriches, balloon in size, weighing hundreds of pounds more than wings can deplete. Their legs grow thick, their feet starving, and newly developed thigh muscles turned into the formidable runners. Though they no longer use their fly, then many of these birds reproduce their wings for other means. They can be spotted cocking their heads beneath them for warmth, flush them at prospective mates, shuttling eggs with them, or even using them to steer as they charge across the plain. They may be flightless, but they are still winning.